We, the Indian Society of Heating, Refrigerating and Air Conditioning Engineers, ISHRE, stand tall in the Indian industry with over 10,000 professionals as members and almost an equal number of student members. Founded in 1981 and headquartered in Delhi, we operate from chapters and sub-chapters spread all over India, bringing our entire industry together. Individuals become members of our society according to their professional and academic standings. Our roadmap of the future looks very bright, with thousands of new members joining this technical society every year and bringing in a fresh outlook to our industry intelligence. ISHRE disseminates knowledge through its technical committees, which consists of some of the best minds of our industry. It publishes technical books, newsletters, and a prestigious journal, distributing the wealth of knowledge to all its members. Working with government departments, ISHRE helps formalize industry codes and standards. ISHRE promotes research by offering financial support to student members to carry out groundbreaking work in technology, systems and processes. Our educational wing, ISHRE Institute of Excellence, organizes training programs and workshops to help members enhance their skill sets. Our specially designed certification programs under ICP, that is, ISHRE Certified Professional, empower professionals to always be in step with the prevailing technology. Specially designed courses for technicians are offered to meet the ever-increasing demand for a skilled workforce. ISHRE organizes exhibitions, conferences, panel discussions, and product presentations throughout the country. We organize the industry's largest international exposition in South Asia, Acrex India, to showcase the cutting-edge technology, innovation, and provide a platform for closer interactions amongst the decision makers in the industry. The Acrex exhibition is now growing from HVAC&R show into BFA, Build Fair Alliance. This brings together several allied shows connected with the building services industry, all at one location. Our chapters organize several other popular events like AgriConf in Delhi, Raycon in Kolkata, Symposia in Mumbai, TechFest in Goa, and many more. We are committed to provide training and career guidance to our student members through seminars, lectures, quiz contests and site visits. A-Quest, a prestigious quiz competition organized by ISHRE to catalyze the transformation of the budding engineering professionals. ISHRE provides a platform to potential employers to select student members for careers in HVAC&R industry at the ISHRE Job Junction. Young minds are made aware of the need for saving power, clean air and sustainability. The K-12 initiative of ISHRE focuses attention on school students' development to inculcate a scientific fervor and help develop them into responsible citizens. Speedy information is imperative to keep moving forward in this hyper-connected digital age. Searcher, a specifically designed search engine, is now available, which allows access to a well-catalogued database on HVAC&R and building services industry with just a few clicks. ISHRE cooperates with various national and international bodies, industry, governments, academia, think tanks to promote the concept of sustainability, environmental protection and energy efficiency and conservation. To enter and explore the universe of the Indian HVAC&R industry, log on to ishre.in that unfolds a panorama of information Let us engineer a sustainable future together through ISHRE.
The basics of HVAC. The modern commercial or office building consists of many sophisticated systems. These systems include foundation and support structures, electrical and lighting, and plumbing and fixtures. Another major part of any building that is often taken for granted by its inhabitants is the HVAC system. HVAC stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. In this unit, we will identify the purpose and goals of the HVAC system, describe basic HVAC parts, and describe how these parts work together. Air quality is an essential consideration in maintaining the productivity, comfort, and health of the occupants and should not be trivialized. If air quality and temperature are not maintained, occupant comfort in the workplace can suffer, directly affecting productivity and morale. The goals of an HVAC.
Welcome to all once again. Good afternoon. Amit sir.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Are you hearing me?
I am hearing you. Is my voice clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, good afternoon. Now I invite Mr. Amit Kakkar, sir, BTech in Electrical Engineering from MNIT Jaipur and MTech in Energy from IIT Delhi. Now presently working as Technical Director, Department of Information and Technology, Jaipur. He was project executed from Rajasthan Vidhan Sabha Bhavan, renovation of Bikaner House, Delhi, renovation of Albert Hall, Jaipur, Bhamasa Data Center, Bhamasa Techno Hub, Abhay Control Command Centers, Incubation Center, Udaipur, and many more. He got the award, e-governance award from non-honorable CM of Rajasthan for the year 2017-18 and Best Project Award in HVAC from IIT Delhi. So welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, sir, you start, sir.
I am sharing my screen.
Yes, sir.
This is my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So thank you very much for introducing me, and I welcome all students on this second day seminar. I'll start this webinar from a quote which says that if you are not willing to learn, no one can help you. If you are determined to learn, no one can stop you. Therefore, I welcome all participants because of their determination to learn, and let's learn together. So the topic of the day is the basic components of air conditioning and refrigeration machines. This is my webinar topic, and if we recapitulate from today where Professor Saravanan left, yesterday Professor Saravanan explained us about the importance of heating, ventilation, air conditioning system, in which he explained about the various thermal comfort parameters like air movement, air velocity, dry bulb temperature, wet bulb temperature, relative humidity, etc. Then he also told us about the building heat transfers like conduction, convection, radiation, and also about the mean radiant temperature, operating temperature, and other parameters. And he also explained about the flow factor, metabolism factor, etc. Then he explained us about the various properties of air. He explained the Gibbs law, and then he explained the psychometric chart and explained us that if you know 3 parameters, you can determine the other parameters like wet bulb temperature, dry bulb temperature, humidity ratio, then about your dew point temperature, relative humidity, etc. And he explained about the Carnot cycle of refrigeration. And he also explained us slightly about the components for which I will be explaining you in details today. And also he told us about the HVAC applications like comfort air conditioning, like precision air conditioning, like process refrigeration, then cold chain, then about the clean room operations and other things where the heating, ventilating and air conditioning applications are used. So my dear students, today I will be I will be letting you know about the basic refrigeration system or vapor compression cycle. Then I will let you know about the various components of system like compressor, condenser, expansion valve and condenser. Then we will learn slightly about the pressure enthalpy chart and the pumps and cooling towers and various accessories used in HVAC system as well as the chill water air conditioning systems are used. So friends, basically what the sir has told us yesterday is that in air conditioning there are two compression cycles. One is known as vapor compression cycle and another is known as vapor absorption cycle. In vapor compression cycle, we generally use the electrical driven mechanical compressor to force a refrigerant around the system. That is, we use the high end energy, that what we call the electricity. And in case of a vapor absorption system, we use the low end energy. That is, we use the heat source such as steam or hot water to move the refrigerant around the system. Today's my webinar is limited to vapor compression cycle. I will be dealing with vapor compression cycle in details. So this is basically a vapor compression cycle in which there are four main components. One is known as evaporator, compressor, condenser, and another is known as an expansion valve. And this is a closed circuit. This is basically a closed circuit where the refrigerant moves. And when the refrigerant is in the evaporator coil, it takes up the heat from the environment. And here it is in mixed liquid and refrigerant vapor form. Then it is when it comes out from the evaporator, it is in superheated vapor form and it enters into compressor. Compressor compresses it to high pressure. And here then it goes to condenser. And here the heat rejection is made in the outside air. And then it is again converted to a liquid line. And then the liquid is again through an expansion valve. This high pressure liquid line is then after coming out from the expansion valve, it is in its vapor form and low pressure vapor form, and the refrigerant moves again and again, and it changes its state from liquid to vapor form. So again, dividing these four main components, condenser, compressor, evaporator, and your expansion valve, the whole system is divided into two parts. One is known as low side and another is known as high side. In the high side line, the pressure is high, and the low side line, the pressure is low. And now I just want to say, I want to recognize all these four items in various components, like in our window air conditioner system. This window air conditioner system, the evaporator is located inside our room, and the condenser is located outside the room. And then there is a compressor and expansion valve, and there is a common shaft which runs two motors. One is known as evaporator motor, another is known as a condenser motor. And if we see it in the form of our split AC, then the room inside this unit which is placed inside the room contains the evaporator, and the outdoor unit which is placed outside or on the terrace or somewhere else is generally comprises of condenser and compressor. Similarly, in the case of our car air conditioning system, we have got these all four units only. The condenser side, condenser, then your evaporator, which is inside our car, and it gives the cold air inside us. And then there is a expansion valve, compressor, dryer, and etc. Similarly, the refrigerant again and again moves in this closed circuit. So whatever the system is, like again in the case of refrigerators which are in our homes, then we have got a evaporator जिसको हम freezer भी बोलते हैं. Then we have got a condenser which is placed outside of the refrigerator. Then we have got an expansion valve and a compressor. So, my dear friends, in all air conditioning system which uses a vapor compression cycle, this is the main four components, and these move in a closed circuit, and the refrigerant moves in a closed circuit, and the components are same: evaporator, condenser, compressor, and an expansion valve. So, my dear friends, the air conditionings are of various types, and as you have seen, you must have seen the window air conditioners, then split air conditioners, which can be either wall mount, which can be either cassette type, which can be either tower type or floor conceal type. Then you have a package air conditioners, which may be either water cooled or air cooled. Then you have got a central air conditioning system, which may be either direct expansion or a chill water, using AHUs and FCUs. AHUs are known as air handling unit, and FCUs are known as a fan coil unit. And then we have got a new technology which is coming up about the VRV and VRF system, comfort air conditioning, which we generally use it in our offices, in our college, or in any malls and etc. Then precision air conditioning systems, which are generally used in data centers. So there are various air conditioning systems, and the working of almost all these air conditioning systems are almost same. And among all these, the most complicated which have a large number of items is central air conditioning systems having a chill water. So I was assigned a task to explain you about the air conditioning system. So I have chosen this one of the toughest air conditioning system, that is central air conditioning system, using the chilled water and having AHUs and FCUs. So I will explain the entire thing to you, and my webinar will be less mathematical, but it will be more practical, and let's see in the end what we have learned. So friends, this is basically a main process diagram of a chill water air conditioning system. And if you are able to explain this system, then you will be able to learn air conditioning in a well concise manner. So see friends, as I explained to you earlier, in a refrigerant circuit, there is one evaporator, condenser, and there is a one compressor and expansion valve. So this refrigerant moves here only. So this is known as a refrigerant circuit. Now I am explaining you about the chill water air conditioning system, right? So the circuit where these refrigerant moves in this closed circuit is known as a refrigerant circuit, and it comprises of evaporator, condenser, compressor, and expansion valve. And this refrigerant reduces the temperature of a chilled water line, and this chilled water moves inside our AHUs and FCUs, where the fan moves over this coil, and inside this coil the chilled water moves, which is at a temperature of about 16 to 18 degrees centigrade. And when the fan moves over this coil, we get the chilled air inside our environment. And when the refrigerant gives its coldness to water, it gets heated up, and when after compression from high pressure, it comes into condenser, and then there is again a water circuit, which is known as a condenser circuit line, and it moves water to our cooling tower. And here, instead of cooling tower, at some time we also can have a air cooling evaporator. So here basically this is a condenser, that is a water-based water cooling condenser, and then the cooling tower gives its heat to outside air. So friends, see, there are one refrigerant circuit, one water circuit which is known as chill water circuit, and another circuit which is known as a condenser water circuit, and the air circuit inside our environment, and another air circuit outside environment. So the window ACs, split ACs, and other VRF, VRV system, they uses only this system. This system, that is a refrigerant system, which is also known as a DX system. But in case of a chilled water system, we have two extra water circuits. Okay, and here we see that there is a requirement of mechanical engineering, because these compressors, evaporators, and these condenser, they are part of a mechanical engineering. To drive these all things, we need an electrical engineers, and the change from one form of that is from liquid to vapor, and the transfer of heat is known as a thermal engineering. So all three types of engineers works in this area, and it's a very lucrative area. So let's learn more about it. So as I said, these are this was the process diagram of chilled water air conditioning system. So let's learn first the chiller part, the one which is known as a chiller. So what is chiller? Chiller comprises of this thing. Again, this circuit. So here what I have explained you earlier, this is evaporator, condenser, expansion valve and compressor. Compressor is run by a motor. Refrigerant only moves in this circuit. It will change here, it will be coming in a liquid state, it will vaporize, it will be at low temperature, low pressure, it will move here. After coming from this compressor, it will be at a high pressure, high temperature, and condenser, then it loses its, it gives its temperature to outside or in the condenser. So here the temperature reduces. So refrigerant will move only in this circuits. Okay. The refrigerant will move only in this circuit. And for taking the chilled water to our AHUs or FCUs, we have this water circuit. This is a separate water circuit. And for cooling the condenser in we have this condenser circuit, which is again, and this goes to cooling tower, and from cooling tower it return back. So there is a complete closed loop system here for cooling tower, and there is a closed loop water circuit here for cooling and taking the chilled water to AHUs and FCUs, and which gives the cold air or conditioned air in the environment which we live. And this refrigerant and this particular machine is placed at one place, and the refrigerant remain in this circuit. We will see all these in the further slides in the form of actual equipments. So you will be able to grab it in a better way there. This is the same circuit. So here I have pointed the various state points. State point 1, state point 2, state point 3, and state point 4. So at state point 1, we have got a low pressure, low temperature, saturated vapor, and it is indicated here in your pressure enthalpy diagram. And at state point 2, we have got high pressure, high temperature, and this refrigerant is converted into superheated vapor. So this is the second point. And when it moves in the moves through condenser, basically it moves to 0.3. This is 0.3, where the pressure remains constant. But when it moves from state second to third, its temperature decreases. So friends, see, it was here at a higher temperature, and its temperature decreases here. And when it moves from 0.3 to 4, it's you see it's 0.3 to 3 to 4. Its pressure decreases, and its temperature also decreases. So at 0.4, it is at low pressure, low temperature, and it is in the liquid state. In the state 0.1, low pressure, low temperature, saturated vapor. So this is pointed out here in our pressure enthalpy and temperature entropy diagrams. Now, this is what I have explained you in my previous slide also. It's basically a repetition of that. And now, this condenser, what I have explained you, the condenser are basically of two types. One is known as air-cooled condensers, another is known as a water-cooled condensers. As I said earlier, here this refrigerant is cooled by a closed circuit water, and through our cooling tower. We will explain about the cooling tower and selection of cooling towers in successive slides. And here it is cooled by air by having these types of fans. And this is again a closed circuit. This is our room, building heat, and the chilled water moves in this circuit. Similarly in this circuit, if you see here, up to here, everything is common. In case of water cooled circuit, there is only a separate circuit for water, and here there is no circuit for separate circuit. So it is how the water cooled chillers and air cooled chillers look like. These are the water cooled chillers, you see. If I can explain you, this is basically a compressor. Then we have got one evaporator, one condenser. This is an electric. There is one motor. This is the control panel for this, and this is the control panel for this chiller. We will explain you about this also. And these are air cooled. So you see these particulars are condensers. Then these are our compressors placed here. This is another view of air-cooled chiller, and this is another view of water-cooled chillers. So they look like this. Now, these air-cooled chillers are placed on either on the terrace or on the open environment. So these are all our condensers. These are all condensers, and these are condenser fans. So here the refrigerant moves up to this place, and the refrigerant gets cooled through fans. Now, basically, depending on the load, these air conditioning environment is divided into various loads. Like we generally say about large buildings. In large buildings, we have a cooling load of in the ratio of about more than 400 TR or more than 1400 kilowatt. In medium buildings, it is in the range of 200 to 400 TR or in the range of 700 to 1400 kilowatt, and in small buildings less than 200 TR, which is less than 700 kilowatt. Basically, 1 TR is equal to 3.5 kilowatt. So we will see what type of chillers to be used in small buildings, what is to be used in medium buildings, and what is to be used in large buildings. So this is generally an idea of you for how much the air conditioning load in case of a small buildings, in case of a medium buildings, and in case of a large buildings. So friends, these are the basically chillers. So if you see, after having the total heat load calculation of any of the buildings, how the heat load is calculated, it will be explained in one of our successive lecture. So when we calculate the heat load comes in generally in terms of kilowatt or maybe in terms of TR. And when we, after calculating the total load, we have to select the various types of chillers. So suppose if there is a load of 2200 TR or say 2100 TR, so you can choose one machine of 2200 TR, or you can choose two machines of 1200 TR, or you can choose one machine of 1000 TR or two machines of 700 TR. Similarly, you can use two machines of 900 TR and one machine of 500 TR, just to make all the calculations equal to about nearly 2200 TR. Basically, the question is how to select which type of chillers or which capacity. Depending on the total load, it depends on your diversity of load. Suppose in the daytime there is a total load of 2200 TR, you can run these two machines. You can run entire machines. But suppose in the night, if you have only a load of 1200 TR, so you can stop one machine for energy saving. And if suppose in case of night you have got only 700 TR, you go for such type of selection. So it depends. When you will calculate the total heat load, then you will also come to know what is your hourly load. So on the basis of that hourly load, you just select the type number and the type of number and the capacity of these chillers. So again, when you select the chillers, there can be, you have to select one extra chiller. Suppose if one chiller goes off or if there is any problem in one chiller, so that you can have a standby chiller. So it generally n+1. Here in this case, suppose your total capacity is 2200, and if you are selecting another standby chiller, then you have to select for again 2200 chiller, 2200 TR. But here, suppose if you are using 1200 two numbers of 1200 TR chillers, then your standby capacity of chiller will be 1200 TR. And if you are using this combination, then your standby capacity will be 700 TR. So in that manner, in order to to have a good economics, you select the number of chillers and you select the number of standby units also. I think what I want to tell you is now clear in your mind. We have to divide our main load into various parts depending upon the hourly requirement, monthly requirement, or yearly requirement, so that our system runs without failure. Now again, suppose this is a one chiller, you have selected one chiller. In that one chiller, you can have one compressor, or you can have two compressors or three compressors. So again, it depends. Suppose if you have chosen a 300 TR chiller, so you can use one compressor of 300 TR, or you can select one machine of having 100 TR compressors in it. So it all depends whether you are in a chiller, you want to select, you want to have one compressor or three compressors, right? So that in case of any system, suppose if it is a 300 TR machine of having only one compressor, and if that compressor fail, the entire machine gets off. But if you have got the two compressors running, at least you can operate your system on 200 TR. So this is what I want to explain you about the selection of chillers. There is standby capacities and also the selection of number of compressors per chiller. Now friends, as I told you, there are two types of chillers. One is known as the water-cooled chillers. So the advantages of water-cooled chillers are that they are more efficient, especially for large cooling loads, and they use water evaporation to dissipate heat through cooling cooling towers, and they are of higher cooling capacity, available in higher cooling capacity than air-cooled chillers, and they have a longer service life. But there are certain disadvantages. They need a lot of water, and since they are installed inside either in the basement, so there is always a noise and vibration problems, and they need higher installation and maintenance cost, and they need mechanical rooms, some big areas in case of basement, and extra risers, extra pumps, extra riser, because if you're keeping your machine in the basement, then you need extra riser to connect the cooling tower. So the cost of these risers increases. Then you need a water for cooling this water for using in this water cooling tower, and then you have to treat that water also for a particular pH and hardness level. So this water cooled chillers, these are the disadvantages of using the water cooled chillers. Then there are air-cooled chillers. The air-cooled chillers, as we see earlier in the water-cooled chillers are generally placed inside the building, while the air-cooled chillers are generally placed on the terrace or in any open area. So what are the advantages of air-cooled chillers? They cost less. They use less pumps, because here in the air-cooled chillers, you need not to have a condenser water circuit, and you need not to have a no cooling tower, and these are installed externally, free up space within on the top of the building, and they require less maintenance as compared to water cooled chillers, but they have certain disadvantages. First, they are installed externally. Since they are installed externally, so they create more noise, which may be a problem for nearby properties, or they have a shorter lifespan as chiller, because all these equipments are placed on terrace, and they are open to rains, storms, dust, and other things. So they have a shorter lifespan, and they can be easily damaged. Anybody on the terrace can go, or any problems can come. So the percentage of their damage is more, and they are typically less efficient as compared to a water cooled chillers. But this all depends where you are, in which environment you are selecting your chillers. So you have to make this judgment whether you want to go for a water cooled chillers or for a air cooled chillers. Now these chillers are basically divided into various categories depending on the type of the compressors which are used in these chillers. Now friend, if I recapitulate what I have told you about the selection of the chillers, then I have told you number of the chillers to be selected, then number of the compressors per chiller, then water cooled chillers, air cooled chillers. Now in this, we are coming to the compressor part. So basically these chillers are divided into various categories depending on the compressors. We can have a reciprocating type of chillers, we can have screw chillers, we can have scroll chillers, we can have centrifugal chillers, and other chillers, or other compressors. So depending on this type of the compressors, chillers are also named similarly. If any chiller is used a reciprocating machine, it is known as a reciprocating chillers. If any chiller is using the scroll chillers, they are known as scroll compressors, they are known as a scroll chillers. If any chiller is using centrifugal compressors, they are known as a centrifugal chillers. Then you also generally name them accordingly. Now coming to reciprocating chillers, they can be either air cooled or water cooled, but this technology is very old technology, and now it's not very much used, and they are available in small to medium cooling loads, and they are generally available from 50 to 500 TR. And their COP is less, 4.2 to 5.5. Therefore, these reciprocating chillers are not generally used these days. And they use a piston and a chamber to compress refrigerant. Piston and your piston and chamber to compress the refrigerant. Similarly, you must have studied your reciprocating machines or your 2-stroke, 4-stroke engines. Similarly, in similar manner, this compressor works on that reciprocating cycle, and their capacity can be controlled through staging, cylinder unloading, and a speed control. While in case of a screw chillers can again be air cooled or water cooled. They are available in capacities from 70 to 600 TR. And their COP, that is COP means coefficient of performance. It is basically an efficiency parameter of this chiller. And their COP varies from 2.9 to 4.15 for air-cooled chillers, and 4.7 to 6.07 in case of a water-cooled screw chillers. And typically one compressor on water-cooled, one or two compressors. Generally, in case of water-cooled chillers, they are having only one compressors, but in case of an air-cooled chillers, they can have more than one. They can have two or more than two compressors. And they use interlocking. These are interlocking helical rotors through which the refrigerant comes through one end and it compresses and goes out through another thing. So therefore, these are two helical rotors. Therefore, these are generally looking very similar to a screw. Therefore, these are known as a screw compressors. And their capacity can be controlled via speed control or a slider control. While in case of a scroll chillers, their scroll chillers, again air and water cooled chillers, their COP varies 3.2 to 4.86 in case of air cooled, and 4.45 to 6.2 in case of a water cooled. And they can also have a one or more compressors. In this case, there are two spiral plates to compress the refrigerant. One is fixed. Suppose that this black one is fixed, and this gray one moves in this particular direction. They move in this particular direction. Therefore, they use two spiral plates to compress the refrigerant. One is fixed and other rotates. So their capacity controlled via momentarily separating scrolls with solenoid valve and electronic modulation. What is meaning of a capacity control? Suppose if you are having a this capacity control is general term which is used for all types of the compressors. Suppose if you have a 100-ton capacity of your compressor or a particular horsepower, then but if you want to reduce it, use it for a part loading capacities, so you can use it to 100%, 70%, 80% or 60%. So that is known as a capacity control as per the load requirement of the at particular time. And now we have got another thing is centrifugal chillers. These centrifugal chillers means the chillers which use the centrifugal compressors. The centrifugal compressors are more or less like our centrifugal type of pumps which you must have seen, and these are water cooled. Generally these are water cooled, not air cooled, and they are typically available from 150 to 6000 TR. Highest rate, big machines are generally the centrifugal machines. They have a coefficient of performance, that is the efficiency running from 5.8 to 7.1, and they use only one compressor or sometimes two for exceptionally large capacity. Suppose if you have got a capacity of 8000 TR, or suppose let us take 6000 TR, then you can go for two type of compressors of 3000 TR each. And these are best at full loading. Full loading means if you are using suppose one compressor of 3000 TR, so it will perform well when you are using this machine for full capacity. And variable frequency drives can be fitted to improve the part load performance. These compressors are connected to a motor, and you can control the speed of the motor, and in that way you can control the capacity of these compressors. Then use one or two rotating, these compressors use one or two rotating impellers to compress the refrigerant and force it around the chiller. And their capacity can be controlled through speed control, as I have said you, in case of by using VFD drives or through vane guides. Now again, there is a very latest type of the compressor which is available, and but it is registered trademark, and it is of from one company, and they use the turbo core compressors, and these turbo core compressors are of very high COP, which ranges from 4.6 to 10, and again in that type you can have one or more compressors, and these they have got a rotating impellers to compress the refrigerants, and their capacity can be controlled through speed control or through vane guides. Now, so that was the one of the type of chiller, and I explained you, and I have explained you about the different types of the compressors in case of chillers, and different types of the compressors which can be either reciprocating, screw, scroll, and centrifugal. So it all depends or at what capacity you have selected your chillers, and what type of part loading you require, and what type of the coefficient of the performance COP is your requirement. So accordingly that you select the compressor of your chiller. Now this is an evaporator, so we'll see what the evaporator is this the evaporator look like this. Again, this is a complete chiller. This is your compressor, this is basically compressor, then a motor here, and this is your evaporator part, and this is your condenser part, and this is your expansion valve. So in case of evaporator, you have got this this evaporator is made of shell and tube structure. Let's see its another picture. See, I have just tilted it, and this is in this form. There are various tubes through which the chill water moves, and here in this hollow shape there is a refrigerant, and when the refrigerant initially enters here in this form, which is at low pressure, low temperature, and it's liquid vapor mixture, and when it gives the its chill, it's a low temperature to your chill water scheme, then this water takes the heat from this refrigerant, and after that the refrigerant gets converted into low pressure, low temperature saturated vapor. So you see the water is moving inside these tubes. These tubes look like this, and the refrigerant is in this part. See, the refrigerant is in this part. These are the tubes. These are shell and tube type of evaporator, and these tubes, what you see, these tubes have got a corrugated surface like this for a better heat transfer. As you must have seen in your motorcycles, the engines have got fins. Similarly, these tubes also have got fins for a larger surface area. And these evaporators can be of 1 pass, 2 pass, or 3 pass. What do you mean by 1 pass, 2 pass, 3 pass? See, here it is a refrigerant, and in these tubes the water moves. So in case of this, the cold water comes, the return from chill water comes here, and they moves in these tubes, and they go away here. And here is basically your refrigerant. While in case of a 2-pass evaporator, the water comes in these tubes, then they mixes here, and then they again move through this entire area and comes pass. So the water is in contact with the refrigerant 2 times. Therefore, it is known as a 2-pass. And here in this case of here, you see the water comes here. It moves to this particular place, then it moves like this. Then again, these are separator. You see the separator plates. Therefore, the water will not come down here when it is moving. The water will move like this. Then water will move this. Here it cannot go because of this baffle plate. Then they will move this in this direction, and then they will move like that. So the water will pass in this evaporator 3 times. Therefore, this is known as a 3-pass. So it's clear in your mind. We have got a shell and tube type evaporator. And these are the tubes, these are their fins, and the refrigerant is in this form, and the water moves in this tubes, and they can be single pass, they can be 2 pass, they can be 3 pass. So that was the evaporator side, and now the condenser side. The condenser side is again here in the similar form. They are also the shell and tube type structure. Here, the water from the cooling tower, that is the cold water coming from the cooling tower, moves over this, Here the refrigerant is in vapor form here. So when they are in touch with, they will take the heat of that vapor, and it will go to cooling tower in the similar fashion as what we have explained in case of evaporator. So here, see here, this is the cold condenser water coming from cooling tower. It will move again to tower in this particular circuit, and the refrigerant will move here to here. When the refrigerant comes, it is generally in the form of high pressure, high temperature superheated vapor. When it comes in with the contact of the water, its temperature reduces, and from high temperature it comes to a medium temperature scale. And here the refrigerant was in superheated vapor form, and here the liquid, when it comes in contact with the water, it is converted into saturated liquid. So this is how the condenser works, how the evaporator works. And in case, as I have told you earlier, these condensers are basically of two types, that is the air cooled and water cooled. We have explained the water cooled, and let's see the air cooled. This is again a chiller placed inside in the basement of a building. So here is a pump, which is known as a condenser water pump. So water is generally taken from condenser, and it is pumped up and up to the cooling tower, and then the low temperature water comes and again moves in this closed circuit. So here basically the water moves in this circuit, and this is an open circuit because the water is flown from here and it gets collected. While in case this is your circuit for chilled water, and this chilled water is connected to our AHUs or FCUs. So here this is connected to our evaporator. So this is your, as I explained you, this is our condenser pumps, and these are our chilled water pumps. And this is a building in which these different components are placed. So here in a chilled water system, the water moves in a closed cycle, refrigerant moves in a closed cycle, while in a condenser water circuit, the water moves in a open cycle, because here the cycle is open. Now coming to expansion valves, there are various types of expansion valves. Expansion valves can be either thermal type, electronic type, orifice type, or pilot operated, or it can be a float type, but generally we used thermal expansion valves. And I will be explaining you the two types of valve. One is thermal expansion valve, and other is electronic expansion valve. So in thermal expansion valve, they look like this. They have got a coil and a bulb, and then there is one main body. One is cap, and this is known as a head. Through this cap, you can adjust the needle setting. I will explain it in next slides. So refrigerant comes here from this side, and through expansion needle, and after passing through expansion needle, it goes to this side. So how this is connected? This is connected in this form. In our refrigerant circuit, this is our evaporator, condenser, and compressor. So this is our expansion valve, and what I have explained you, so this is the coil, and here the coil is open up, and it is connected to the entering point of our the leaving point of evaporator. The refrigerant is moving like this. So the bulb is placed after the on the outlet of the evaporator. So this is the bulb which is connected here at the outlet of the evaporator. This is the coil is connected here, and this is your main expansion valve. The expansion valve is connected here. So what happens? It works like this. When here the refrigerant is moving, it's coming in the liquid vapor mix form, and here after taking the heat, it gets converted into super vapors. So the heat is transferred in this bulb, and there is a separate refrigerant here. So that refrigerant gets boiled up, and it moves to this expansion valve. So what happens when this moves to expansion valve? This happens. When this refrigerant, which is in a closed circuit here from bulb to this expansion valve, so it pushes, there are basically a diaphragm. So it pushes a diaphragm, and diaphragm pushes this needle. This is a needle, and the refrigerant is coming out from here. This is a cut section of this expansion valve. So what happens when this is pushed? The refrigerant which is coming here, which was earlier in high pressure, medium temperature in a liquid form, it passes through this needle or an orifice, and it get converted into liquid vapor mix. It is similar to what you what you do when you push your this equipment. You see the liquid is there in our bottle. When we push it, it gets converted into vapor and liquid form. Similarly, our refrigerant gets, the liquid refrigerant is converted into a liquid and vapor mix form through this expansion valve. And when the this moves, after this coming from when they are coming from condenser, it is in liquid form, and when it comes in evaporator, it is in the liquid vapor form, this form, and it gets takes away the heat from the evaporator. So this is the manner in which the thermal expansion valve comes. But nowadays we are using the electronic expansion valve. The electronic expansion valves are used with our new type of machines like VRF units, inverter, mini splits, heat pumps, chillers, and AHUs. And there are many benefits of using expansion valve. Basically, they give precise control. They are fast and accurate, and they have wider part load variations than thermal expansion valves. And they maintain maximum capacity control even at part loads. And they are also responsible for energy saving. They save almost about 15% of energy by controlling the refrigerant moving inside the evaporator. So these are electronic expansion valve. They look like this. These are the various types of the electronic expansion valve. These are the parts of the electronic expansion valve. I have opened this one. So when you open this up, you will find a stepper motor here. Stepper motor rotates the this thing in a very small steps, so that you can very well control the refrigerant moving from your condenser side to an evaporator side. So this is basically a stepper motor. It's a copper coil. It's a permanent magnet, shaft, thread, and needle. So here how it is connected. It is connected in the form of this your high pressure, medium temperature liquid, which is coming from your condenser. And the expansion valve is connected here. So as earlier we have explained you that your sensing bulb is connected at the end of the evaporator coil. Similarly, in this case, you see this. There are two sensors. One is temperature, and another is a pressure sensor, and there is a controller. So they take the temperature and pressure conditions of this refrigerant, and then they give signal to this stepper motor. Stepper motor gives a very precise control to open this valve here, and the refrigerant moves from condenser outlet to your evaporator coil through this an expansion valve. So here in this case of electronic expansion valve, we have a very precise control. So in almost in all modern applications or modern machines which are coming up, they are having this electronic expansion valves connected to them. Now again a new term which I've also explained to you previously, that is the coefficient of performance. So this is basically a chiller, and the input to a chiller is an electrical energy, and output of the chiller is basically a chilled water. So the coefficient of performance of any chiller is basically the load divided by the electrical energy input. So suppose if you measure for getting a suppose 2,500 kilowatt of cooling load, that what you measure through your formula, cooling load is equal to MCP delta T. Delta T is basically the difference of temperature of the water which is coming to the evaporator from return line and going from supply side. So the temperature difference of these two water, then you calculate what amount of cooling load you are getting, and the electrical energy input. So 460 is the electrical energy input, and in terms we are getting 2,500 kilowatt cooling load. So if you divide this, there is a COP of 5.4, which is also known as coefficient of performance. So this is the measure of calculating the efficiency of our chiller. C, don't get confused. This is the COP of chiller, not the COP of the entire system, right? So COP of the chiller is equal to the cooling load divided by the electrical power which is being drawn by the motor of the compressor. So this is the manner in which we calculate the COP. Now the chiller controls. There are various types of chiller controls. Again, these are chiller. To revise again, this is our motor compressor unit. This is our evaporator. This is our condenser, and this is a control box. So what is desired to measure? There is a motor. We want to measure its current, voltage, and temperature of the motor. So there are sensors to measure this. Then we want to measure the temperature of the outlet of the compressor, temperature sensor. Then here we want to measure the temperature of the water coming to our evaporator unit and the flow of the water, then the temperature of the outlet water from the evaporator. Similarly, the temperature and the flow in our condenser and the outlet of the condenser. So T measures temperature, F measures flow, P measures pressure. So pressure is measured in our compressor input and output side, and these are temperature sensors for measuring the temperature of refrigerants of inside of inlet and outlet. And similarly, other things like here you want to measure temperature and pressure. So all these sensors are fitted, and these sensors are fitted are taken to a control box. And what happens, friends, you can set these values. You can set the value of set the value of the temperature of your evaporator, what you are getting, the temperature of your condenser, and you can make the system run. So depending on the system will run automatically. It will give you the desired feature. They will measure accordingly the temperature of the chill water. They will measure the incoming chill water, and then the compressor will operate accordingly in part load or full load or whatsoever. So by sensing these temperature, pressure, flow, and other things, these chillers are operated automatically. And now we'll see how to improve the chiller efficiency, because there's a lot of discussions on these the efficiency part of this. So we'll see how the efficiency is calculated. There are various methods of improving the chiller efficiency. We can replace the compressor with new energy efficient compressors, like reciprocating compressors can be replaced by screw or scroll compressors, and VFDs, by installing VFDs on our compressor motors, then increasing set point of our evaporator and condenser temperature. You can use the electronically commutative fans on our cooling tower, and then using electronic expansion valves in case of thermal expansion valves, and digital controllers and sensors, which I explained you. Then chiller part sequencing. According to your load, you can sequence your chillers. As we have studied earlier, there are various types of chiller capacity, suppose 1200, 700, and another 500. So depending on the load, you can select the particular chiller to operate. And by using the VFDs and AHUs, pumps, and CT fans. So this is again the one diagram to explain you the COP on part loading for centrifugal chillers. As you see, when there is a constant speed chillers, their COP varies from 0 to say 6 or 6.5. But in case of a part loading, you see when the compressors are working on part load, their COP is very high. So in this manner, this is the way to select your compressors of a particular chiller also, depending on the heat load calculation and their variations, daily variations or weekly variations or monthly variations. You can see these. So the COP curves are available for almost all types of compressors. And as I said, you can improve the chiller efficiency by improving the set points of your evaporator and evaporator temperature. Suppose what happens by by setting the evaporator inlet and outlet temperature. Increase in chill water temperature results in increase of evaporator pressure. So see friends, this pressure will reduce. Increase in chill water temperature results in increase in evaporator pressure. So this evaporator, which means less work to be done by a compressor. Similarly, in case of sorry, this was your yeah. So by having a by setting the condenser water temperature, it results in decrease in condenser pressure, which results in less work done by compressor. So less work done by compressors means less energy input to a compressors, and definitely if the denominator side is less, the COP will vary. But you have to, this is, you have to adjust your inside conditions. This does not mean that by setting the temperatures of your set point of particular thing, you will get the desired comfort conditions. 1% increase in the inside temperature will result in 7% decrease in your energy consumption. So regular cleaning of evaporator and condenser is required. So you see these are the shell and tube type of condenser. You can clean it regularly. The tubes requires for cleaning regularly so that the fouling factor and there is a better heat transfer between the refrigerant and water. And similarly, in case of air-cooled air-cooled chillers, you can wash the fins so that the better heat transfer is there. Otherwise, the dust and other things will accumulate on your condenser part, and the heat transfer will stop. So potential energy saving is there for 10% for heavy fouling and 1 to 3% typically. The fouling means the hardness of the water, which is deposited on inside of the tubes. And another, by improving these fans, the cooling tower fans, by electronically commutated fans, or you can use the VFD drives, and that saves your energy by 6%. And friends, this was the process diagram of a chill water system. I have explained you about the compressor part and this closed circuit of refrigerant circuit. I have explained you about the chiller water, this chiller closed circuit chill water cycle and closed circuit condenser water cycle. Now we will study this condenser water circuit, and we will study the different parts of the piping. So basically there are cooling towers. There are two types of cooling towers, which are known as a natural draft cooling tower and mechanical draft cooling towers. They are again of two types, induced type and forced type, and they are either of the cross flow type or counter flow types. So these are the cooling tower which is induced type, induced draft. Matlab they will take the air out here, and these are counter two types. One is known as a counter flow, another is known as a cross flow. The counter flow is that the air and water are moving oppositely, while in the cross flow they move in perpendicular direction. So there are two types of cooling towers are available. Then these are induced, and another is forced draft type. You are just drafting the air on the water which is dripping, so it gets cooled. Basically, while selecting the cooling water, there are two parameters. One is the cooling water inlet temperature and the cooling water outlet temperature. So what is the cooling water inlet? When the hot waters from condenser come, this is the cooling water inlet, which is at high temperature. And when it goes down, the water temperature decreases, and this is the cold water temperature. And this is the wet bulb temperature of the ambient air. So the difference between the cooling water inlet and the cooling water outlet is known as the range, and the cooling water outlet and the wet bulb temperature is known as the approach. These are the two important parameters, and the cooling tower efficiency is calculated by this range divided by the range plus approach. So generally the cooling tower efficiencies are in the level of about 70 to 75%. And because the water is moving both in your chilled water circuit and in condenser water circuit, so that water has to be of very good quality. Their pH level should be between 6 to 8, and there should be about 100 ppm of calcium carbonate. And this is the cooling tower mass balance. The water required, makeup water required, is equal to the blow down water and evaporative loss and the drift losses. So this is the basically mass balance equation of an cooling tower. And similarly, in chilled water pumps, these are the circuits for chilled water, in which the chilled water is supplying water to our fan coil units or AHUs. We will see it in our further slides. This I have already explained to you. This is the manner in which these pumps are connected. This is a condenser water pumps cooling tower. Now we'll see how these are made in our drawings. These are the actual position of pumps in our pump rooms. Another installation, and these are the VFD drives for pumps. Let me please. So we'll study something about the pumps. So pumps, basically these are the centrifugal pumps, and these are close coupled with our motors. So there are basically impellers. There are parts of the pumps are impellers, shaft, gland, and stuffing box. These are the pump casing. My main idea is to tell you about something in detail about the pumps. There are various types of impellers in pumps. One is known as closed type, semi-open type, and open type. And their flow rate can be controlled through impeller thickness and rotational speeds, and the pressure of the pumps can be controlled through impeller diameter. It is of larger diameter, it is a smaller diameter, and rotational speeds. And generally, while selecting the pumps, you have to study the pump curves. These are basically the performance curves of pumps. And they look like very complicated in this manner, but they are very easy to read. I'll explain you how to select a pump. Basically, when you are going for a selection of a pump, you have to see what is your head and what is your flow rate. If the flow rate, if the head is low, the flow rate is high, but if the head is high, the flow rate is low. So therefore, these are the performance curves of a pump. The flow rate is high when the head is low, or the pressure is low, and when the head increases, the flow rate decreases. And therefore, selecting on that part, you have to select your the particular type of the pump. These are two pumps, and you here see that you have to use you have to select a pump for about 30 gallon per minute, and for a head of 70. So you use the pump of this curve. You cannot use the pump of this curve, because pump should be selected which is either higher, which is at the place which is above this performance curve. So for example, for 30 US GPM capacity of flow for a head of 70, this pump curve is low. You cannot select this, so you have to select this. And similarly, you can increase in the head by selecting these impeller sizes. These impeller sizes are available in different. These impellers are available in different sizes. So here you see it is available in 6.5 inch, 5.5 inch, and 4.5 inch. So these are different performance curves for different impeller sizes. If you want to select for a 30 US GPM for say 2.5 feet, you have to use an impeller of 5.5 inch. Similarly, these are the performance curves. Then the energy curves, or the sizing of the motor. These are basically the various curves for sizing. So when you see you need to have a 125 GPM of 20 meter head, and then you select a motor, and here comes it is of about 0.75 bhp. So you select this 0.75 bhp motor accordingly. So then similarly, there are efficiency curves. So these were the performance curves. These were our energy. These are our power pump power curves. These are pump power curves, and these are your efficiency curves. So you have to select all these three, and we see that as the size of the impeller decreases, the efficiency of the particular pump also decreases. So these are the manners, because when you will be taught about the heat load, then depending on the heat load, you will be calculating the water quantity required. Then on the basis of that water quantity required, that is on the basis of flow and head, you will be selecting these pumps of particular capacity. Similarly, these are another important pressure is net pressure suction head. So net pressure suction head, suppose if the flow is 200 meter, so your positive suction head should be around 10 feet or 3.5 meters, because if you are selecting a pump of say 200 GPM, and but if you have a low suction head, then this will not work. So these are the important criteria for selecting your pumps. Again, dear friends, let me take 1 minute of yours. You can vary the speed of the pumps by VFDs, and you see as you vary the speed, your performance changes. For the same flow, here you see when the speed is 120 and at the 3000 RPM, you are getting a much higher heads as compared to these things. So let me explain to you about the piping accessories. These are our chillers. So these are first the isolating valves. Isolating valves are connected here on the line to regulate the supply of your water. That is the flow of your water. You can regulate with isolating valves. Then you put the temperature sensors to sense the temperature or the pressure or other things. So here we are putting a temperature sensor, then orifice plates to measure the flow. Then your double regulating valves are connected. And after that, there's a test points for testing the temperature or pressure and other things. Then you have got the temperature gauges, then pressure gauges. So these all are connected in one particular side, that is on the evaporator side. Similarly, then we connect the flexible connections. These flexible connections are there to reduce the vibration of the machines to our piping work. And these all things are repeated. Then our pressure gauge, flexible connection. So all this is being repeated here in condenser, and it comes like this. And if you have got 3 chillers, they are connected like this. And for these pumps, we have another thing which is known as a strainer. This will this is required to remove the anything to clean the water. If there are suppose any dust or another thing or any कोई कचरा आ गया उसके अंदर पानी के, तो these strainers will remove from them. And they, again a non-return valve, so that if the water from this does not get into this circuit. These are the non-return valves connected. This particular manner in which the pumps, these your flexible connections, the pressure gauges, test points, non-return valves, isolating valves are connected. Similarly, they look like this in actual situations here. And the manner the connections of various piping accessories as far as the chillers are concerned, as far as the pumps are concerned. Similarly, in the case of your cooling towers, we also use all these types of accessories. And again, in cooling towers, we use these isolating valves, motorized valves, flexible connections, orifice plates, and other things. So this is the manner in which all our drawings are made. We have studied all this. We have initially studied our refrigerant circuit, then our condenser circuit by using all these piping accessories. Similarly, there is a chill water circuit. All these accessories are also used in our chill water circuit. And the chill water goes to our AHUs. And AHUs, through their fans, they blow the air through our AHUs, and we get the cold air. So these are the AHUs. These are the parts of the AHUs. In AHU, we have got a fan, we have got a humidifier section, we have got a cooling coil, and we have a mixed air. So what happens? These are the cooling coils on which the chill water is coming, and the fan moves the air through these coils, and they pass through a humidifier, or then they are supplied to a particular cooling space. And from cooling space, there is some return of air, and then this is mixed here, return air, and the fresh air is mixed here, and some air is being exhausted. So this is the cycle in which the chilled water, the temperature of the water is get converted through AHU by air, and that air is being delivered in our rooms where we live. And there are other Falcoin units. These fan coil units are similar to that of AHUs. Here also the chilled water is coming, and the air flows over that chilled water, and we get the chilled air in our environment. Somewhere we also use ducts, and we also provide the insulation of the ducts to check the heat transfer. And there is a complete separate chapter for duct design, but you have to select the sheets, whether you want to go for a GI sheets or whether you want to go for aluminum type of sheets. And the sizing of these ducts are being dependent upon the amount of the air which you are delivering. And there is a particular ASHRAE and ISHRAE codes are there, which specifies the speed of this air moving through it. So depending upon the amount of CFM and the air speeds, we design the cross-sectional area of the ducts. And these are the grills and dampers which you have seen. The air comes through these grills and dampers in our particular environment. And these are the electrical panels which supply the power to our chillers, to our motors, to our cooling towers, and to another areas. And so that is all about which I wanted to tell you. And today, if I want to summarize, I have told you about the various components of refrigerant circuit, that is the condenser, evaporator, compressor motor, then expansion valves. I have also explained you about the pumps. I have also explained you about the accessories used in pipings like isolating valves, temperature sensors, temperature gauge, pressure gauge. And I've also explained you about the chiller control circuit. I've also explained you about the calculation of the COP of chiller. I have also explained you about the pumps. Though I was a little fast because the time was too short to it, but I tried to explain you about the how the COP of a chiller is measured, and what type of the piping accessories are provided there, and how the cooling tower is selected, what are the different types of the cooling tower, what type of water is required for our chilling system. We use generally the water of having a pH value of from 6 to 8 and hardness, typical hardness of 100 ppm calcium carbonate. So then a bit about the ducts, a bit about the AHUs and FCUs. So this was the summary which I have explained you, but in the successive lectures, you will learn about the heat load calculations. You will learn about the psychometry. You will learn about the various refrigerants, and also you will learn about the various classification of air conditioning systems and various categories of air conditioning systems which are coming up. So this is the last slide of my presentation. I'll try to say, the Michelangelo say, I am still learning. So I will tell you, my friends, that a learning curve is essential to growth. Keep learning and apply learning. So that was all from my part. Thank you. So let's start the question answer session. Anything, Sandeep, you want to say before I start my question answer session?
No, sir. You have to start.
Should I continue?
Yes, sir.
Because the time is less, and I think we are a bit in time, though it was a quick or a very fast lecture. If I miss something to explain you, I will explain you, try to explain you through your mails or other things. But let me take the questions. One question is that, sir, would you will be able to share the PPT? Yes, Sandeep ji will share the PPTs tomorrow. I'll share my PPT to him, and he will mail to all the participants. And second question is that which cycle is most efficient? Basically, there are two types of cycle. One is vapor compression cycle and vapor absorption cycle. It basically depends. As I have told you, the vapor compression cycle uses the high end energy, and the vapor absorption cycle uses the low end energy. So it depends. Both the vapor compression cycle has got a better COP as compared to a vapor absorption cycle. Another question is, sir, in split AC, we use refrigerant, liquid or air? Basically, refrigerant is generally in a liquid form when we purchase it, and it is basically a difference in variation in temperature and pressure, which changes its state from liquid to vapor state. As we have seen in that cycle, when the refrigerant enters the evaporator, it is in the liquid and vapor mixed form, but when it enters the your compressor, it is totally in the vapor form. And basically it is conversion of liquid to vapor and back from vapor to liquid by change in latent heat. This refrigerant is able to take up the heat and give away the heat. So in split ACs generally, or in any type of the AC, the refrigerant is generally in the liquid form. Another question is which condenser chiller are most efficient, water or air? I have explained you, my friends, in my slides. The water cooled condensers are more efficient as compared to air cooled, but it all depends on the availability of water. So you have to take the decision accordingly. The single short answer is that water cooled chillers are more, water cooled chillers having that type of condensers are more efficient as compared to air cooled. Another question is how the compressor is to be cooled during working on vapor compression cycle. As I have explained, the compressors, this is a good question, how the compressor is cooled. Basically in compressors, there is a oil, and that oil moves along with the refrigerant, and that oil is responsible for cooling the all these types of basically compressors. Generally there are rotating points and parts, and these the oil is responsible for cooling these types of the compressors. Another question is what type of chiller have high COP? Definitely water cooled chillers have got a high COP, and you will also see it in heat load calculations. And I have also shown you the various slides in which the various COPs are given, and we have also given the various COP for air cooled and water cooled. So definitely the water cooled chillers have got the high COP. Next question is why can't we use turbo chillers? Basically, we can use turbo chillers, no doubt on it. Turbo chillers have got the very high COP. As I have told you in my of the slide, it is written that their COP is varying between 4 to 10, but these turbo chillers are basically trademark of only one company. And they are costly. So again, it depends on the economics, what type of chiller you want to purchase, and what is the maintenance capacities in your area where you are using these types of the chillers. You can use the turbo chillers. They are highly efficient chillers as compared to all types of the chillers. Secondly, another question is, can we use radiant cooling in India? Yes. Radiant cooling is used in India, and it is one of the form in which we reduces the heat load inside the building. And there are various applications and various buildings which are already using the radiant cooling. In radiant cooling, there are pipes which are running in our दिस स्लैब्स ऑफ अ बिल्डिंग, जिसको हम छत बोलते हैं, छत के अंदर ही जो होता है वो कॉपर की ट्यूबिंग्स लग जाती हैं और दूसरे मटेरियल की ट्यूबिंग्स लग जाती हैं, थ्रू विच वी कैन मूव द वाटर, एंड सो द वाटर इज ट्रैप्ड right where it is being entered in the building. So these radiant cooling is a very efficient procedure, and most of the students can take up their project for radiant cooling, and it is very one of the efficient system there. You can use the radiant cooling. Another question is, sir, is there any disadvantage of vapor compression cycle? Definitely. There are disadvantages too. One of the most important disadvantages is that the vapor compression cycle is using refrigerants, and the refrigerants have got their own ozone depletion potential and other things, so they are spoiling our environment. This is one of the disadvantages of vapor compression cycle using the refrigerant. And another question is how to select number of compressors for chillers. It's a very good question. Suppose I'll tell you the answer of this question is that when you select a particular, you calculate your heat load, and suppose if your heat load is coming around say 250, suppose 300 TR, and you see the catalogs of different manufacturers, and you also study the variation of heat load or the variation of tonnage requirement of you on a daily basis or on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis. And if you see during the peak daytime from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. the load is 300. So that means 300 TR is required. But say in the early morning session between 8 to 11, you have got only a load of 200 TR, and in the night you have got a load of 100 TR. So means you have to use a chiller which is having a 3 compressors of 100 TR use, 100 TR capacity. So in that manner you choose your compressors for a chiller. But friends, it is generally, you will not find this type of compressors. You have to refer the catalogs and the brochures of a company, because they make these chillers in that particular fashion. So you have to make a trade-off between your heat load calculation and your chillers, and then number of chillers, and then further the number of compressors per chiller. But a very good consultant always see these things. He always select the chillers of a particular capacity by studying the variation of heat load. Then further he selects the number of compressors accordingly. This is a very good question, and it's if you select the number of compressors and number of chillers according to your variation of load, then you can save a lot of energy. Next question is for residential purpose, normal AC or inverter AC are better? It's a very good question, dear friends. You please hear my answer for this. First, I will tell you the inverter ACs are good. They are highly energy efficient, but they are costly also. Suppose a 2 TR split AC of a normal AC is coming around say 35,000, but an inverter AC will come to about 50,000. Now you kindly hear my answer very carefully. There are various star ratings available, 2 star, 3 star, 5 star, and then there are inverter ACs. So my dear students, I will tell you, you select the type of the AC according to the number of hours you are using it on your daily basis. If suppose you are using only inverter for say 2 hours daily, then why to buy an inverter AC? Because inverter AC will cost you 55,000, and 2 star AC which you want to run for 2 hours will be will cost you around 30,000. So you have to make a trade-off between the number of hours you want to use and the cost. My takeaway is that if you are using for a 24 hours application, use inverter ACs or a 5-star ACs. But if you are using it for a lower hours, say if you are putting your split AC in your drawing room, and which general it is used for less than 1 hour, go for 2 star or 3 star AC. But in bedrooms, you must be using for at least 10 to 12 hours. So go for either inverter AC or 4-star or a 5-star AC. So it is always depends on the economics. My dear students, because when you will come in the field, don't prescribe the highest type of specifications available. You have to see the economics of your client also. So the best answer for this, there's a trade-off between the economics and the specifications and its usage. So keep it in that manner. And I think I have answered your question very well. Next question is how the sizing of the chilled water pipe is done. This is a very good question. How the sizing of the chilled water or a condenser pipe is done, basically depending on your load. Suppose if your AHU load is say about 10 to 15 TR, suppose it is 20 TR. For a 20 TR load, you need to have a particular water capacity. So you need to have a gallons per minute requirement for that AHU. Depending on your TR capacity. So there are basically, if you see the ASHRAE handbooks or ISHRAE handbooks, so on that, according to load, you calculate the water requirement, and on the basis of the water requirement, there are basically tables and graphs which will give you the sizing of the water pipes to be used. And according to that, you use the water pipes, because suppose initially at the outlet of the evaporator, there may be 6-inch pipe, then it will reduce to 5-inch, then to 4-inch, then to 4-inch, then to 3-inch, 2-inch, and 1-inch. Because as you are taking that chill water outlet, you are according to your requirement of a particular AHU, your sizing will get reduced, and you will able to select the size according to your GPM requirement from the various curves which is given in ASHRAE handbooks or in the ISHRAE handbooks. Or you can see these types of various graphs in Google also. You can select them from their requirement also. Next question is there any difference between VRF and VRV? No, my dear friends, there is no difference between VRF and VRV. VRF stands for variable refrigerant flow, and the VRV stands for variable refrigerant volume. Basically, VRF, this type of the air conditioning was invented by a manufacturer called Daikin. So they use the word VRF, and other companies like Hitachi, Mitsubishi, Voltas, Blue Star, they use the word VRV. So basically the technology is more or less the same. It is only the name of company of using it. You can refer it VRF or VRV. So there is no difference between VRF and VRV. Next question is how do we calculate the efficiency of the entire system, since we calculate COP for some parts and efficiency of other? Very good question, dear my friends. You will wonder, I also never thought of it, and when I was preparing this my slides, then also this was a very good thing. I came to understand that we talk only of the COP of chiller, we don't talk of the COP of the system. So my dear friends, actually, if you want to calculate the entire efficiency, you have to calculate the power input to various AHUs, power input to various FCUs, power input to your various pumps, power input to your various cooling towers, motors, and other thing. You calculate all the power given to a system through your panel, and select what type of what is the output in terms of tonnage. So you divide the total tonnage or the total cooling effect which you are getting divided by the total power input to all these machines, and you will get the efficiency of your entire system. Very good questions at this age by a student is really, I love this question, and I really thank to Prachi for asking this question. Thank you, Prachi, for asking this question. Second is, sir, for a given system and calculated refrigerant capacity in TR, how to select a fan coil unit model for a cold room? Again, a very good question. While you select a cold room, you just calculate the tonnage capacity required. when you calculate the heat load of that particular cold room, then depending on that cold room, suppose if you require a 10-ton cooling capacity, so either you can go for a 5-ton FCU, 2 numbers, you can go for a 4-number FCUs of 3 TR capacities, or you can go for a 2-ton FCUs of 5 numbers. So it basically looking to the storage area where you want to keep your put your FCUs for proper air circulation and other things. You divide the total tonnage by the total number of places where you want to get. For a similar total capacity, you can have any number of FCU of any capacity. The total number multiplied by capacity per FCU should be equal to the total tonnage requirement of a cold room. M.K. Gupta ji's question, what is the basic difference between AHU and FCU? The friend, sir, there is AHU stands for air handling unit and FCU stands for fan coil unit. Both of these two things are doing the same job. They are converting the coldness of water to air. AHU is generally for higher tonnage applications and FCUs are for smaller applications. FCUs are generally for say 2 to 3 TR capacities, while AHU is for larger capacities of say 5 to 20 TR requirement. And in AHUs, there is a mixing of return air, fresh air, exhaust air, while in FCUs, there is only a supply air, there is a no return air. And FCUs are used for controlling the temperature of an individual rooms, and AHUs are used for controlling the temperature of a big area. I think I have answered your question. Next question is excellent presentation. Thank you for that. Another question is, what are the different kinds of fan used in the condenser and evaporator unit? There can be, this all depends on the capacity. Somewhere the propeller fans are used, somewhere the electronically commutated fans are used. It depends on design. For example, in case of our window ACs and in split ACs, we use propeller type fans, while in case of the cooling towers, we are generally these days we are using the EC fans, because in EC fans we can also, using the VFDs, we can control the speed. So that is there. Thank you for that. How electronic expansion valve works, I have explained you this in a very detailed slide. The expansion valves, there is, takes the temperature and pressure of the refrigerant from as they enter the compressor side, and on the basis of that they give signal to a stepper motor, and that stepper motor opens and closes the valve accordingly. So this was well explained in a slide. You kindly see my presentation again tomorrow when Mr. Sandeep sends you, and it will be answered. If not, then you ask me again. Another question is, which type of chiller would be more efficient for ACB system? ACB system, I am not able to understand what is the ACB system is. Next question is, sir, there are many accessories involved here, which all areas can be worked more upon integration of them for a more efficient process. Yes, there are a number of accessories, but my dear friends, by using the BMS system or chiller plant manager, all these accessories are well connected and they communicate with each other. And one thing I want to tell you, if you set your all the things and they work automatically, the compressors loading, unloading, work is automatic. You are just to start the system and manage the system. Everything is managed these days by good electronic controls and BMS controls. And there is almost 4-hour lecture on these controls by using BMS or chiller plant manager. But all these days, these are all automatic these days. I have also shown one slide of various temperature, pressure, flow sensors, and these are the softwares are so accurate these days. On the basis of the sensors output, that is temperature, pressure, flow, they work automatically. How the compressor is to be cooled during working on vapor compression cycle, already answered. Another question, how to clean evaporator. The evaporator, the shell and tube type of evaporator is cleaned by a rod. I have shown a slide on that, and in case of air-cooled evaporators, they are generally cooled by, they are generally cleaned by air pressure and water, and you have to check, you have to mix it with some additives so that the fins are cleaned and there is no anti-effect on the fins of the air-cooled evaporators. Again, question is, sir, which is better, best chiller air conditioner, that is water or air? I have explained you, water is better. Another question, for systems with high TR rating, which refrigerant is used? Basically, it depends on there is a lecture coming on this refrigerant side. He will answer you well. I will say you, I will only say, wait for that lecture, learn and understand this question. I am leaving this question for another lecturer to answer for you. How the compressor is to be cooled during working on vapor compression, already answered. Sir, for a given system and calculated refrigeration capacity, how to select a fan coil unit model for a closed, answer already given. Sir, how about the condensate collected at evaporator coil? Very good question. At evaporator coil, you have a drain pan, which is there is a pipe, insulated pipe connected to it, and that takes the water to a nearby place of disposal. But in various buildings where there is a lot of condensate, that is collected at one single point and it is being reused. I have seen one webinar of in ASHRAE where they are using all these condensate water and they are reusing it. It all depends on the on your building, how many liters of condensate you are generating. Very good question. Please take care. You can save every drop of your water. Another question, how many questions should I take more? What is the role of oil separator? The role of the oil separator is to separate the oil from the refrigerant. So that is the, what is the important when buying a split AC, COP, efficiency? These are almost the same terms. Energy, ER stands for energy efficiency ratio, and COP, almost same thing, no, not a major difference. Buy a thing which is got a higher COP or higher energy efficiency ratio. Then which refrigerant is mostly used? It will be told by our another lecturer. Then, sir, in chillers, other refrigerants, all refrigerant questions I am leaving for another lecturer to answer you. What is approximate difference in cost of conventional split VRF chiller systems per ton? Good question. Chiller system generally cost you 75,000 rupees per TR, and VRF system costing you about 65 to 70,000, and split again costing you about 30 to 50,000 depending on which type of technology you are using. Basic difference between rotary compressor and inverter type compressor. Inverter type of compressor is basically a motor with, through which the speed changes, and because you must have learned N is speed is equal to 120 F upon P. The number of frequency, the F is fixed, which is equal to 50, 120 into 50 divided by poles. Poles are generally fixed, so by varying the frequency, you can vary the speed of your compressor, and so that is how the inverter AC works. How the humidity is to be controlled in radiant cooling in humid days. Basically, the radiant cooling is used for sensible heat load calculations, and humidity what is being generated inside is generated. So in radiant cooling, if some air conditioning is being also used additionally for keeping the comfort conditions, then that take care of humidity. But in generally in dry areas where you put the radiant cooling system, the humidity control is generally not required. It may vary, it depends upon the type, because you might not be using radiant cooling in some humid environments. And there are again particular days you can't have a full comfort conditions for your 8760 hours in a year. So there are some unmet hours. So that is all there is. Without compressor, will AC work? No. compressor will not work without AC. This you can easily see from your TS diagram and pressure enthalpy diagram. What is the safety standards followed while making central cooling system? Definitely various safeties is to be maintained while installing your chill waters, ducts, machine transfers, machine equipment installation. Safety is required at every step. A big lecture on this topic can be done. Thank you for asking this question. Then there are too many questions. I think Sandeep, time is less, but the question is very good. I will answer all these questions. There is one question. Please take rest now. You spoke so long, so I am taking
Yes, sir.
rest.
Yes, now.
Thank you for all for attending this seminar, this webinar. And I was bit fast, but I can't. I want to tell you much things in less time. If anything Sandeep permits me, I will take a workshop for you in which we can design each and everything accordingly. Thank you,
Yes,
participants. Thank you, Jyoti.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. A wonderful session. Now I invite for the acknowledge Mr. Mahendra Sethi, President, Jodhpur Subchapter. Sir, please. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Sandeep. Good evening, all. Another fabulous session on components and accessories of AC and refrigeration machines. I would like to thank Mr. Kakkar for this enlightenment of our knowledge. On behalf of ISRE Jodhpur Subchapter, Jeet Student Chapter, and Jaipur Chapter, I would also like to thank Jodhpur and Jaipur team for organizing such a wonderful event. Thank you. Thank you all. Over to Sandeep ji.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, sir, once again for a wonderful session.
You send me all these questions. I will reply to students, and I am very happy that the students have asked such a good questions. There was a paucity of time. Sorry for not replying. And I really feel I was not able to explain most of the things in depth because of time. You go through my slides, go through my another thing, call me in my anytime on my mobile and send me mail. I will be able to answer the queries of students, and I wish a good future for all students in HVAC industry. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I will